when he made the payment to Virginia in 2022, I believe, a statement was put out on his behalf. And the statement said that he would endeavour to help or work a way forward for victims of trafficking. That hasn't happened. I mean, could that be a way forward maybe for Andrew? Some kind of charity work, show some kind of contrition, doesn't have to admit anything, he can continue to maintain his innocence, but is there a way forward maybe in a charity sphere, even behind the scenes?
It needs to be a very brave charity. I mean, just trying to be fair to him at the moment, that statement, I'm sure that intention was valid, that's what he wanted to do. But if you're sitting on a charitable board, you're looking at the work of, let's say, an established charity in that field, having Andrew on it, is that a particularly good look?
Well, you called him toxic.
Yeah, so therefore, I don't think it brings the right aura, to what you're trying to achieve. I think in time, it's quite interesting that, gradually things sort of fade away in people's mind. There isn't the same sort of intensity of emotion around an idea. And I think that he possibly could, in the background, maybe he is, give some advice, help people, use whatever influence he has. And he has a powerful network outside this country, particularly in the Middle East. So I think there are stuff he could do, but perhaps that he can't go public on it. And I think that's what people expect in some way, that there's got to be this fulsome idea of what you're doing next. So I think it is tough for his brand, but I think that there is an opportunity, and maybe that's what's going on at the moment. We don't know.
I disagree, actually. I think if there was an opportunity, it was after that Newsnight interview. That was when things needed to change for Andrew. That was when he should have shown some contrition. He could have, his daughter's involved with anti-sex trafficking charities. I think best leave it to Eugenie and Beatrice doing the great work that they do. I just think that Andrew is, as you say, so toxic. I don't think there is any hope of a rehabilitation for him. This is the man who would turn business trips into pleasure trips and play golf anyway and loves to horse ride. I mean, can't he just go and do that on a remote part of an estate and leave the king, who is doing, in my opinion, a brilliant job? He's, the family's been under so much pressure the last few years. The last thing they need is this sort of incumbent on it, making it even harder than it needs to be, attracting all sorts of difficult and, frankly, negative headlines. A time when, I think the royal family could do without it.
He is toxic. There's no way about it. And that, that interview was
a disaster.
The full stop. I mean, I think I described at the time it was like the equivalent of driving a clown car with a lit cigarette through a firework factory. It was just jaw-droppingly sort of deaf in terms of, and blind in some ways to things around you.
And yet we're 6 years on and it still hasn't recovered for Andrew. No. It's still, more
no, because he keeps trying to edge his way back in.
He won't let go.
That's
in the same way that Harry and Meghan won't let go of those HRH titles. He just is clinging on. He needs to let go.
And as soon as you edge back in, it's a story. It's a story. And particularly in a world where, it's clickbait news around Andrew, with thousands of titles.
Well, I'm sure all our thoughts and prayers go to Virginia Giuffre's family in Australia.
It's very, very sad.
It's a very sad.
Incredibly for her family, sad. A terrible time to be going through.
But nothing from Andrew, and we think it's the right decision.
Yeah.
Fine. King Charles hosted a reception at Buckingham Palace. This was a reception for people who were living with cancer, people who were working in cancer charities and also health professionals, and some big names as well, including the family of Sun colonist Deborah James, who sadly died a couple of years ago, and there was a big bowel cancer campaigner. The King did deliver some words. They were written. They were very strong.
Yeah, they were very powerful.
As far as the King would go, they were kind of personal, poignant words. But he's an authentic person in this kind of area. He's a great spokesman or a great face for raising the profile of living with cancer, but also the care that patients get.
Yeah, he's been, both he and the Queen are patrons of numerous cancer charities, including Macmillan, who were there at the reception last night. But I think, it was very important that after we learned of the King's cancer diagnosis and when he was able to go back to work in remarkably short time, actually, and you consider he's 76. You know, he is remarkable. That, you know, the first engagement he did was to go and visit a cancer centre. I mean, that was a really powerful moment to convene these charities and these leading researchers into cancer care at Buckingham Palace last night was clearly a very deliberate move. As you say, it was a handwritten message in a booklet, I think, that went to everyone that was invited last night. And to hear him write about what a daunting and fearful experience being diagnosed with cancer is, you know, will resonate with a lot of people. I mean, he pointed out 1,000 people a day in the UK are diagnosed with cancer, and he's connecting with these people.
Well, if you don't mind, you as someone who has been open about their own cancer diagnosis, how important were the King's words to you, or the fact that he seems to have your back? He seems to understand what people are going through.
You know, I think that he does speak to you know, the cancer community, which isn't just those of us who've gone through a diagnosis. It's the family, it's the friends, it's, you know, it affects all of us, really. And so I think to have our head of state sort of so personally aligned with something that touches so many of us is really important. I think he's sort of smashing stigmas in terms of talking about it. We've never heard the royals be so open about their own personal health, and you know, and I think that extends very much as well to the Princess of Wales. You know, she has spoken to anyone suffering to reassure them you're not alone, and I think that's a very hopeful message to send out. Cancer isn't always the death sentence that it once was. People are surviving cancer more. They are living with cancer. It's being diagnosed earlier. You know, and I think the fact that it's affected 2 of the most loved and senior members of the royal family within the space of a year has had a very profound impact on people.
I mean, not just the King and Princess of Wales, but also Sarah Ferguson.
Yes, of course. Sorry, I should have mentioned her as well. Yeah,
you know,
Matt,
Sarah
you're right.
Ferguson was there. Sarah Ferguson was invited to the event at Buckingham Palace. And I'm just wondering, after everything that had happened with Prince Andrew in the last couple of weeks, is this a show of support for Sarah Ferguson?
Listen, the King has a very, you know, he's a really good relationship with Sarah. I think she's very well liked. She's been invited to family occasions and up to Balmoral. And, you know, she has been a very loyal supporter of Andrew, but more than just that, of the royal family. You know, and I think the King is incredibly magnanimous in many ways, and that's just an example of one of those ways in making sure that she's included, because, as you say, she's gone through her own personal experience of it.
Mark, how powerful do you think it is to have someone such high profile as the King speaking out, showing support for cancer survivors, people going through cancer, and the charities?
I mean, it's incredibly important to be able to openly talk about this, and you look back and you think perhaps, you know, in the Queen's time, there wouldn't be this openness about health issues. And I think that it's beautifully framed in the sense that there's never too much. Somehow they've got the sort of ability to talk about this and not go too far. But by saying so much, which to a certain extent, there was a lot of speculation around. Let's not forget that with Catherine, they did get it wrong. They did let things hang, and obviously there were sort of private issues connected with that. We can understand that. But again, when we talked earlier about conspiracy theories, some of the most ridiculous things are being written about at the sort of time. And I think they found a way of expressing it and then finding the same sort of language to go out and support people who as Katie said, you know, it's an important thing for the cancer community to have that level of person to bring hope. And we're talking about positivity in perhaps for many people it affects families in a very negative time.